Cem Sultan, a prince, a rebel, an adventurer, and a hostage. Cem Sultan was born in Edirne on December 22, 1459, 6 years after his father's conquest of Constantinople. As Mehmet already had two sons, Beyazit and Mustafa, the arrival of a third, and the question of succession greatly upset him. Still, Cem was brought up with all of the honours of a prince, quickly growing to be a favourite of his father and the Ottoman court. During Cem's early childhood, the Ottomans were far from secure in their power, with powerful enemies to the west, east and south. To the west, the Venetians, Hungarians and Albanians fought to resist Ottoman conquest and retaliated in the form of crusades. To the east, their powerful Karamanid Beylik remained a rival for dominance of Anatolia. Even after falling under nominal Ottoman vassalage in 1463, the Karamanids retained great power within their South Anatolian domain, launching several rebellions backed by the Mamluks of Egypt. 1468 would see the 8-year-old Cem given his first governorship in Kastamonu. Accompanied by his mother and two guardians, he was raised for rulership, receiving an education in Persian, Arabic, poetry, and the sciences. Cem was the only son born while Mehmet was the reigning sultan. He would be the legitimate heir under the succession laws of the Eastern Roman Empire, a fact Cem would later use to strengthen his claim. Soon it was clear to everyone that the charismatic and popular Cem was becoming the favourite for succession over the gloomy Beyazit. In 1472 and 1473, he was even allowed to serve as regent, while his father and brothers were campaigning against the Akayunlu. As Mustafa died of illness the next year, the stage was set for a succession showdown between Cem and Beyazit. This struggle would begin on the 3rd of May 1481, with Mehmed's death near Gebze. Karamanli Mehmet had immediately sent 3 fast riders to Konya, where Cem had served as governor since Mustafa's death, to give him a head start to Constantinople. But Bey of Anatolia and supporter of Beyazit, Sinan Pasha, created checkpoints on all the roads leading to Konya, intercepting the messengers. Meanwhile, his own messenger brought the same news to Beyazit in Amasya. Qasim Aga, commander of the Janissaries loyal to Beyazit, had his troops storm Topkapi Palace and execute Karamanli Mehmet, parading his head through the streets on a pike. On May 20th, Beyazit entered Constantinople and was enthroned as Beyazit II. Cem had lost the race to Constantinople. But rather than accept this, he decided to fight. Cem portrayed himself as a people's sultan, who would end the oppression and taxation of the central state over the provinces, attracting the support of the Karamanids, local craft guilds, and minority religious sects such as the Alevi Shia. With his army of volunteers, he marched to the former Ottoman capital Bursa, where the garrison joined his ranks. Now boasting a strength of some 20,000, he sent his brother an offer. They would split the Ottoman Empire, with Beyazit to rule its European provinces from Constantinople, while Cem ruled Anatolia from Bursa. Fortified as he was in Bursa, and with Beyazit facing Janissary mutiny, Cem hoped his brother would accept this ultimatum rather than risk battle. But Beyazit's response was clear. Between kings, there can be no kinship. On the 22nd of June, Beyazit and his army of 40,000 regulars arrived at Bursa. Rather than wait out a siege, Cem chose to ride out and meet him. But by noon, Cem's untrained and outnumbered army was routing, and what regular forces he had were defecting to Beyazit. After only 20 days, Cem's rule in Bursa had met its end. With his family and some 40 loyal followers he fled, escaping the pursuing army and beginning his new life in exile. After a 3-day stay in Konya, Cem left the empire to take sanctuary with his father's enemy, the Mamluk Sultan Kate Bey. Kate Bey's lavish welcome helped him keep his ambitions undiminished, and he hoped that with the backing of the Mamluks, he would be able to raise another army and oust Beyazit from Anatolia. He refused Beyazit's offer of a generous pension to live out his life in Jerusalem. After a 6-month stay in the Mamluk Empire, during which he became the first Ottoman prince to perform the Hajj to Mecca, Cem set out again for Anatolia with 60,000 gold coins from Kate Bey's treasury and thousands of soldiers from Mamluk Syria. By the 6th of May 1482, he had gathered his forces in Aleppo, and shortly after continued to Konya, joined by both the Bey of Karaman, Qasim Bey, and the governor of Ankara, Mehmet Aga. With their support, Cem now had a stronger force than before. But Beyazit had not been idle either, and as Cem was besieging Konya, the Sultan gathered more than 100,000 troops to crush his brother when Mehmet Aga broke off from the siege of Konya to return to Ankara for his family. On the way, he was intercepted and defeated by an Ottoman detachment, his head sent as a trophy to Beyazit. When news of that and of the massive army approaching Konya was spread, morale broke and Cem's army melted away without battle. For the second time, Cem was defeated and powerless, fleeing the wrath of his victorious brother, this time to the highlands of Pisidia, where he and Qasim Bey planned their next move. With the pursuers cutting them off from returning to Kate Bey, Cem suggested fleeing to the Akayunlu, but Qasim Bey suggested instead turning to the Christian princes of Europe. Cem agreed, making a decision that would greatly impact European history. Evading Beyazit's troops, Cem rode for the Cilician coast to seek the protection of the Knights Hospitaller of Rhodes. Transferred from a Caramanian galley to a Rhodian flotilla, Cem made a striking impression with his grace and manners. By July 29th, Cem was in the castle of Rhodes, guest of the Master of the Order, Pierre de Busson. Cem developed a deep respect for Pierre as the two came to know each other. In Rhodes, Cem sought to win the backing of the Christian princes to help him take the Ottoman throne. Over the past decades, as his father penetrated ever deeper into Europe, even taking Otranto in southern Italy, meant to be the staging ground for a grand conquest of the peninsula, alarm had grown and calls for crusade had been raised. Cem hoped to make use of this, promising to forge an eternal peace with Europe and return all conquered Christian lands if he was brought to power. Unfortunately for Cem, the pragmatic d'Aubusson knew that the political climate in Europe was not a harmonious one. With the threat of Mehmet lifted, Italian states, including the papacy, were locked in incessant war with each other, as were the Holy Roman Empire and the Kingdom of Hungary under Matthias Corvinus, the Ottomans' fiercest European rival. D'Aubusson surmised that a crusade was unlikely, and that negotiation with Beyazit was more practical. Thus, though the agreement between Cem and the Hospitaller leader guaranteed Cem freedom of movement, D'Aubusson was already securing concessions from Beyazit, a peace treaty, the return of fortresses, and most significantly, a yearly stipend of 40,000 ducats in exchange for keeping Cem safely under control and out of Ottoman politics. As quickly as Cem had put his faith in the Hospitallers, he had been betrayed. From the moment he entrusted himself into their care, the mighty prince had become a prisoner. On October 17th, Cem was taken to Nice, then part of the French-dominated Duchy of Savoy. Word had spread of Cem's presence with the knights, with many other Christian monarchs taking an avid interest in the prince. During the trip to Nice, and during their stops in Syracuse and Messina, they were dogged by spies of King Ferrante of Naples, who had been fighting intermittent wars with Venice and the Pope, and hoped to win an alliance with Beyazit. Upon Cem's landing in Nice, and being set up in the safety of one of the knights' commanderies there, the scramble only intensified. The prince was told by the knights that the delay in Nice was while they awaited permission from the king, Louis XI of France, for a Muslim to travel through his country. Later, as Cem's impatience and suspicion grew, he was told that Louis had refused the request. This was a lie. Louis had in fact been eager to meet Cem, but the knights kept Cem on a tight leash in Nice. When Cem sent his retainer, Nassu Bey, to accompany a knightly envoy to Louis, he was quickly arrested as a spy and never reached Paris. Other messengers Cem sent, trying to get in contact with Kate Bey and his other allies in Asia, simply vanished from the historical record. Whether they were captured by the knights, by Beyazit, or simply abandoned their defeated prince's cause is unknown. None of the messengers sent by Cem from Nice seem to have reached their destinations. Despite his captivity though, Cem seems to have been quite happy in Nice. Poetry he wrote during this period expresses his fascination with the local customs and the beauty of local women. Many stories have sprung up about the dashing Turkish prince, usually revolving around heartbreak and romance. One of the more colourful ones, suggesting that the courtesans of Nice were so sad to see him go that they presented him with a talking white parrot and a chess-playing chimpanzee, who would comfort him for the rest of his days. Cem would not be long in this gilded cage, however, and was moved after a few short months from Nice to Rochechouart, where local legend says he fathered a child with the daughter of a local noble, Philippine. From there he was moved in early 1484 to Bourgneuf, and then Bois-l'Ami, where he would spend 2 years. From Bois-l'Ami we get the story of La Dame Elle Lincoln, a young woman named Jeanne, another noble daughter, who was also said to have had an affair with Cem. Finally he was moved back to a tower in Bourgneuf, built by the knights expressly to hold their valuable prisoner. There was reason for this heightened security. Numerous monarchs across the Christian world and beyond had taken an interest in the knights' prize. Some, such as King Ferrante of Naples and Doge of Venice Giovanni Mocenigo, sought to win a closer relationship with Beyazit by using Cem as a pawn. Others, such as Matthias Corvinus and Pope Innocent VIII, had not lost hope that a crusade might be launched against the Ottomans, with Cem as its figurehead. The Mamluk Sultan Kate Bey offered to pay 20,000 ducats for the knights to return Cem to his care. D'Aubusson accepted the money, but reneged on releasing Cem. The young Duke Charles of Savoy even attempted to free Cem, not for profit or crusade, but in honour of the friendship the two had formed when Charles came to visit this exotic prisoner in his lands. But all was for naught. The tower kept Cem securely imprisoned through both rescue and assassination attempts, as Bayezid seethed and the chance for a crusade slipped ever further away. The final step in Cem's long journey would be Rome itself. In 1488, Innocent managed to secure Cem after long negotiations with King Charles VIII of France by making the Archbishop of Bordeaux a cardinal, undercutting the efforts of an extravagant Hungarian embassy competing for custody of Cem. Cem would live out most of his remaining captivity in the Vatican. By this point, both Cem's grand plans to retake the throne and Innocent's hopes of crusade now seemed distant. Poetry Cem wrote in Rome, and the accounts of his main chronicler Sedudin, show the once charismatic prince grow morose and regretful. Refusing attempts to convert him to Christianity, and despairing of ever winning the Ottoman throne, he begged simply to be allowed to return to a Muslim nation and live out his days peacefully as Bayezid had once offered. But it was far too late for such a life now. To Innocent he was too valuable, and to Bayezid too dangerous. 1490 would see both rulers attempt to end the long stalemate. Bayezid sent Cristoforo Castracano, a renegade Italian nobleman, to assassinate Innocent and Cem by poisoning the Vatican's main well, but the plot was uncovered and foiled by the Venetians. Innocent, on March 25th, convened a council before delegates of every Christian nation, seeking to finally start the crusade both he and Sixtus had hoped to make a reality. But the death of Matthias Corvinus disrupted both the council and the European balance of power, with the council's planned reconvention never occurring. As D'Aubusson had before, Innocent decided to instead profit by negotiation with Bayezid, receiving 120,000 ducats up front and 40,000 more yearly for Cem's upkeep. Rather ironically for a pope so set on the idea of crusade, Innocent even refused Kate Bey's offer of Jerusalem and its environs in exchange for returning Cem to Cairo. In 1492, Innocent passed away as well, with his body now resting in a bronze tomb constructed with funds from Bayezid's upkeep payments. Alexander VI, a nepotistic scion of the Borgia clan with at least 8 children, replaced him as both pontiff and as Cem's jailer. Cem's last few years of life were defined by the grand ambitions of another royal, King Charles VIII of France, who in 1494 invaded Italy on the basis of his dynastic claim to Naples. King Ferrante, who had dogged Cem's footsteps a decade prior, had died early the same year, leaving his untested son Alfonso to weather the French onslaught. But Charles planned for more than the conquest of Naples. He saw in himself a second Charlemagne, who would reclaim Constantinople and the Holy Land. For this purpose, as his army passed through the papal lands, Alexander turned Cem over into the king's care. After his long exile, Cem was finally in the hands of a powerful Christian monarch, as he had planned. For the first time in a decade, the prince had hope. But Cem would accompany Charles no further than Naples. By the time the French army seized Capua on February 18th, Cem was laid so low by illness that he needed to be carried on a stretcher. The French blamed Pope Alexander, claiming that the pontiff had given Cem a slow-acting poison in Rome. But as Cem's loyal food taster, Ayas Bey, had accompanied him every step, and as Cem's death deprived Pope Alexander of the 40,000 ducats flowing yearly into the papal coffers, this charge seems unlikely. Others suspected Bayezid, but by illness or poison, Cem Sultan died on February 25th, accompanied by the companions that had followed him so faithfully throughout unfriendly foreign lands. He was 35 years old.